Florida Gators have already taken down one key opponent in the SEC Eastern Division. They're looking for another one, this time on the road when they go to Kentucky. Got David Waters here from Gators Breakdown to break it down for us. That's what David does when you talk about Florida football. David, how you doing today?
Doing good, Mark. Man, Florida, Kentucky recently has just been one of those weird games. And honestly, I have no idea what to expect. Florida's kind of under Billy Napier been a roller coaster. And this year, in some ways, it's already been a roller coaster, too. You mentioned the big win over Tennessee. So now it's time to take one on the road.
So, yeah, it was a special night in the swamp against Tennessee, and it wasn't a game. Hey, any win would have been a key win for this particular team and for Billy Napier in building a program. But this was a game that wasn't necessarily that close. Florida really shut down the Tennessee offense, which has been difficult for a team to do the last year and a half. So it was a pretty impressive showing.
Yeah, it really was. And there was a lot of pressure, I think, on Billy Napier for the first time, Mark, to just kind of get that win. Not a hot seat pressure or anything, but I think felt, after the loss versus Utah to open up the season, Billy Napier just kind of needed it to kind of get some good feeling going on in Gator Nation. And that's exactly what happened with the big win over Tennessee. So, as you said, defense now 4 games in, and 2 Utah and Tennessee, and then kind of 2 quote unquote cupcakes. But I think we have enough evidence by now. This is a much, much better defense than what we have seen the last few years in Gainesville. So how much can that carry this team as they kind of figure their way out, dealing with some injuries along the offensive line, had some suspensions last week as well, kind of led to a disappointing performance offense against Charlotte, kind of bouncing off that Tennessee game, but the defense has been a constant through 4 games. So hopefully the defense travels on the road, Mark, because the big issue here for Billy Napier, the only win as a Florida head coach on the road is last year at A&M. He's 1-6 on the road right now. So the next step, you got the rivalry win over Tennessee. The next step is to get a big, big road win.
Well, the defense and the run game usually do travel. So let's stay with the defense because, like you say, even in the loss against Utah, 270 yards of total offense for the Utes, 3.5 yards per carry. Like, this defense has shown up in every game, coming off a game with 4 sacks, 6 tackles for loss against Charlotte, only gave up 1 touchdown in the first half there. So I'm sure it's been a combination of personnel upgrade, some guys stepping up that weren't necessarily expected to maybe this early, and then the scheme coming together as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, it's youth, and that's the crazy thing about it. You got one of the youngest defensive coordinators in college football, Austin Armstrong, leading this defense, and it's a defense filled with first-year to second-year players that are the best playmakers on the team right now. You got Jordan Castell, a true freshman safety who has really stepped up, might be the best player on the defense right now, and he's a true freshman. He's played the most snaps on defense than any other player on defense right now. Shamar James is a second-year linebacker and really, really coming out in his second year like we kind of thought he would. And Scooby Williams has emerged at linebacker. I mean, linebacker was a sore spot for years for Florida, and now that's a group they can really, really count on. But all of it comes together because, Florida's what we talked about all offseason is a much deeper, more talented front than they have been. They had to hit the transfer portal to go get Cam Jackson and Caleb Banks, and those 2 guys are really, really paying off. And this is after Justice Boone goes down the preseason with an injury, and Florida has still proven to be pretty deep up front. They had to move Tyreek Sapp over. He's excelled there at the defensive end spot. Princely Human Mielen's creating pressure game in and game out. He seems to be getting better every game. So it's just really a combination of youth and just being so much talented, so much deeper up front. And that was the big question. We knew that was the potential up front, and that's made the whole defense better, but we had to see it with our eyes. We knew they went to the transfer portal to get bodies. We thought they were more talented even after losing Jervon Dexter last year, but now they're so much deeper that guys don't have to play 60 snaps a game. They can break up the snaps throughout the game, and Florida can really go 6-7 deep there along the defensive line and feel really, really comfortable about it. And you've had some emergence of true freshmen like TJ Searcy and Will Norman and coming along, second-year player Chris McClellan. I mean, they're just so much deeper with a lot of young faces up front there for Austin Armstrong.
Got David Waters here, of course, from Gators Breakdown. And so you can do one of two things. You can find your favorite audio platform and catch David's work there with the rest of the crew there at Gators Breakdown on your favorite audio if you want to go that route, or right here on YouTube, of course, Gators Breakdown. When you look
Mark,
at the
I got to throw in Kelby Collins. That was the name I was trying to think of.
okay,
I got to give him his due right there for another true freshman. So
absolutely, absolutely. Uh, when you look at the offense, yeah, not a sterling performance against Charlotte, of course, but actually Charlotte has played some decent teams fairly close. Um, but it looks like they've settled into what they want their run pass ratio to be. You know, they've got Graham Mertz at about 20-25 pass attempts. He obviously barely let the ball hit the ground this past weekend at 20-23. They did have some issues running the ball, surprisingly. Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson, I don't think there was a concern about those two guys. So was it strictly offensive line not getting the push last week?
Mostly, Mark. I mean, Charlotte would stack the box, and Florida would kind of run into it anyway. I think it was a pretty vanilla game plan. There wasn't as much motion as we've seen Florida go with. Not getting the wide receiver screens involved or the wide receiver reverses. You saw one to true freshman Andy Jean. The running back screen game wasn't necessarily there, and we've seen that a portion too. So I think the game plan played into it a bit, but I think the most disappointing part was, along the offensive line. Now, keep in mind, Florida was playing without their starting center, Kingsley Aguakin. Micah Mazuka was suspended because of the scuffle versus Tennessee late in that game. Damian George as well for the first half. So Florida's first half, they were playing without their, three of their offensive linemen there. You still would have liked to see a push versus a team like Charlotte. You didn't like in almost every short yardage situation that Charlotte was kind of dictating the trenches there. But you can excuse it, but should it be an excuse, I guess is the best way to put it. So I think, Florida, as long as they get healthy, Kingsley Aguakin, we'll find out later this week if he's going to start there at center for Florida. I think he's the linchpin to kind of get this run game going. But Florida should get Micah Mazuka back, doing able to confirm that, and Damian George should be able to play the whole game after he was only suspended for a half. So it's about, I think, trying to work out this run game. Montrell Johnson doesn't seem to be as in sync as he was with this offensive line. Trevor Etienne still can make some things happen, but Montrell Johnson so far is kind of taking a step back this year. And I think maybe just a little bit of syncing issues with the offensive line. Florida hasn't played the same offensive 5 starters on the offensive line yet this season. So if they get their starters back, they had the starters versus Tennessee, so that lends itself to maybe a much better performance than what we've seen. But they're still shuffling along the offensive line, and maybe they can get that figured out this week versus Kentucky.
Thanks to Disney and Spectrum, I didn't get to see the Utah game. Now, the Tennessee game, I saw most of that. It looks by the numbers, and again, seeing the one game, that Graham Mertz is probably giving you about what you would expect of a pretty positive Graham Mertz version of him.
Yeah, not turning the ball over, and that was a big worry coming from Wisconsin, where he did turn the ball over, and he's taking much better care of the ball, and not taking a lot of chances. There's not a lot of downfield shots. It's a lot of short to intermediate throws. But that was still something Gator fans wanted to see based off of not necessarily seeing it with Anthony Richardson last year. It was kind of feast or famine with Anthony Richardson, of course, being able to complete balls down the field. We're not really seeing that for Graham Mertz. He did push the ball a little more downfield versus Charlotte than he did in other games, even the McNeese game a couple games ago. So it is taking care of the ball. But, Mark, I do think we know now, playing Kentucky, going on the road, they're trying to make Graham Mertz beat them. They're probably going to stack the box and make sure him and these Florida receivers can get open and see if they can hit some plays down the field. So big test, I think, on the road at Kentucky this week, just to maybe see how expansive this passing game can get under Graham Mertz.
Folks, we're 15-5 against the spread this past weekend, 17-4 against the money line. You can get my picks as a YouTube channel member or on Patreon, patreon.com/MarkRogersTV. You also get the Discord link as well. And of course, join David at Gators Breakdown. Yeah, you look at this Kentucky team, much like Florida, they had a big, highly publicized incoming transfer quarterback in Devin Leary. He's not off to much of a start. They've got a really good wide receiver core. They got Ray Davis, the former Vandy back, who was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. It's an intriguing matchup. Do you think that there's anywhere in particular Florida can take advantage?
That's the toughest part of this game, Mark. I see it with the way both defenses are. This really could lend itself to this old style, old school SEC slobber knocker, for what lack of a better term. I think both defenses can probably really control this game if both run offenses can't get going. Kentucky brings in a really good rush defense, and I think Florida's defense, and we spoke about it, I think speaks for itself as well. So it may be on both quarterbacks to go out there and win this game for their team. And does either team feel really, really confident in being able to do that? I think that's the kind of biggest question. Kentucky's had some better, probably performance of being able to pass the ball down the field a bit, but as you said, their wide receiver core kind of goes three deep. They spread the ball out pretty well. But they haven't played a defense anywhere near like Florida's right now. Kentucky's still kind of a mystery team right now. 3 quote unquote cupcakes to open the season. Then they played Vanderbilt last week and let Vanderbilt kind of get back in the game a little bit after going up 21-0, and then they kind of spread it back out a bit and separated themselves. So kind of interesting to see how this game will play out if both teams can't run the ball. If both teams can't run the ball, do they still try and stick with it just to be afraid of making a mistake and let the defense take advantage? Or does one of them then just try and open it up and take advantage in the passing game? It's I go back and forth, Mark, on just how this game can play out if both defenses really, really step up.
Yeah, Kentucky, pretty thin 4-0. Florida, on the other hand, one of the few teams across the country that's played 2 quality opponents in Utah and Tennessee. So they obviously are battle tested at this point. They get together in Lexington in a series that you used to be able to just kind of check it off. Oh, there's a win. 34 in a row at one point. Was that the number? But it's been
31, I think it was. Yeah.
Hotly contested here in the last 5 years.
It really has. I mean, you go back to the Jim. Yeah, you go back to Jim McElwain days, and that's kind of when it started. Florida was still winning, but some late game heroics, some late game gaffes by Kentucky that would lead Florida to win. And then in 2018, it all changed. Dan Mullen's first year, Kentucky goes to the swamp and beats Florida. And since then, Kentucky's pretty much had the better of Florida, except for 2019. Put it this way, Kyle Trask has had to be quarterback for the Gators for them to beat Kentucky. So Felipe Franks couldn't do it. Emory Jones couldn't do it. Anthony Richardson couldn't do it last year. So we'll see what Graham Mertz holds there and see if he can get it done like Kyle Trask did in 19 and 20.
Gators Breakdown, folks. It's a tremendous listen, whether you do that on your favorite audio platform or right here on YouTube. David Waters and the crew there at Gators Breakdown. David, it's always a pleasure. Good to see you. And we will see. This is a bit of a separation game, and we'll see if one of these two can separate and move on to a Georgia affair at some point down the line.
Yep. Thanks, Mark.